Be talking about this Anunnaki today. About to get up in this van, get this video started. Do have a habit of locking myself out of it. Start this little road trip. You guys have seen the van before. Got some cargo today. It's been a long time since I just did an Anunnaki video, but it kind of needs to be done. Let me saddle up my horses. So how did a topic almost no one knew about, no one talked about, wasn't on anybody's radar, but Andrew Tomas made a couple mentions like in the 1970s, early 70s. And then all of a sudden, the topic of the Anunnaki, a topic that had been forgotten for thousands of years, was suddenly exploded onto the world scene. How'd that happen? Well, most of you know the story. A Jewish author who really wasn't even qualified to write this. It's not his background at all, his educational background. A man who attended the London School of Economics, same place Graham Hancock went, provided us the Earth Chronicles, all about the Anunnaki, a whole new narrative that strangely, because of the way Zechariah Sitchin interpreted the Shar count, it lined up really neatly with the bogus Freemasonic version of history that we know of as the uniformitarian doctrine. The idea that humans developed over hundreds of thousands of years through natural selection and evolution. Two ideas that completely ignore a vast body of information. Yeah, guys. The story of the Anunnaki was exploded onto the public scene by an intelligence apparatus. That's how that happened. Get on this interstate forward. Switch this camera. That's exactly how this happened. It's a beautiful day in Texas. Absolutely beautiful day. Zechariah Sitchin wrote some fantastic books. I fell for him at first. I didn't have any reason not to. I didn't have any reason to disbelieve the narrative that he was putting out. I studied Enlil and Ea, Enki, Ninhursag. He got me interested in all these amazing topics. Little did I know I was falling for a psyop, and it was a psyop that it was really a bifurcated agenda. One of them promoted ancient aliens. The other one, uniformitarianism. So it supported the anthropological model of world history, while also supporting ancient aliens. A stroke of genius. Zechariah Sitchin had an agenda. A lot of his material was very good, but a lot of it was bogus, absolutely made up, and the academic establishment dismissed him. They dismissed him because a lot of his translations of Sumerian words was absolutely bullshit. Absolutely bullshit. And it's these same translations of words that promotes ancient aliens that these shills like Billy Carson, Matthew LaCroix, however you say his name, LaCroix, it doesn't even matter how you say his name, he's absolutely irrelevant. He's as irrelevant as Carson. This Facebook-educated paradigm that has exploded into the truth community. That's why I'm always going to remind you guys of this shill history. It's bogus. It's absolutely untrue. And it's agenda-driven. It's crazy how many people believe this. The Anunnaki is nothing but a Babylonian term for Anuna. I recently listened to a Billy Carson podcast. In all his early years, he never said Anuna. He was always talking about the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, whatever, man. That's all he ever said. But in my Anuna files, I corrected the misinformation. And I know Billy Carson has been listening to my videos. He's dropped many things out of his mouth that came straight out of Archaix. And one of them was I corrected the misinformation about Anunnaki. Anunnaki was invented by Babylonian priests. It's not even in the oldest cuneiform records. Anuna is the oldest. The Anuna were nothing but a race of people. When we talk about the Anunnaki, we like to sensationalize things, man, because this is what people with a Facebook education do. This is what they do when they try to sensationalize things to make more money. It's the grift. It's all it is. It's the grift. Zechariah Sitchin was in on it, except his was more sophisticated. He was backed by an intelligence agency. No different than Emanuel Velikovsky, another Jew who published an amazing series of books specifically designed to get you to think that everything in the ancient world that was actually attributed to Phoenix was actually the planet Venus. This is what Velikovsky, his role was. Zechariah Sitchin's role was more sophisticated. In the Earth Chronicles, we're to fall for the trap of the ancient alien scenario that a technologically advanced race came to Earth, had sex with human women, and gave rise to the civilizations of Egypt and Sumer, Harappa, Urartu, India. It's all BS. The Anuna were pre-cataclysm humans. The Anuna are described in many different ancient texts. In some, like in Egypt, there were the shining ones. Why? Because they look like, to dark-skinned race people with dark eyes, dark hair, white people with gemstone eyes look like they're shining. The same reason the Aboriginals accused Captain Cook and his English sailors of being ghosts. Why? Because them ghosts were white. This is why you have, in the Sumerian depictions, the Sumerians prided themselves as being the dark-headed, they called themselves the dark-headed people. Why? It was to distinguish them from the red hair and blonde hair people of the Anuna. Yeah, guys. This is why not a single soul in the ancient aliens community dares to accept my debate. Yeah, they don't want to debate. They don't want to make made to look like a fool. Billy Carson's not dumb, guys. He's not dumb. Because if we had a debate, I would be dropping data and questions that would humiliate him publicly. He's not dumb. But the historical record is very clear that technologically advanced Caucasians, technologically advanced white people, were the civilization founders and builders in the 34th century BC. Why the 34th century? Well, we don't know. We can surmise. We can definitely surmise. We know that in the 35th century BC, there was a terrible cataclysm caused by the Nemesis X object. The book of Jasher reads that at that time, Enos was king. It was in the days of Jared. Enoch had just been born. 1/3 of the entire world's population died in flooding. The center of civilization at the time was Egypt. How do we know? Because the book of Jasher says it was at Akuzan in the river Gihon. Old Arabic texts are very clear. Gihon was the Nile River. The only place I know the Nile River exists is in Egypt. Akuzan is nothing but an ancient rendering of Giza. Giza is the modern-day abbreviated version of the ancient Akhuzan, where the 3 Great Pyramids were built. I've showed all this on my channel and my published books. When we understand that the Anuna were simply just normal humans, everything in the historical record makes sense. We're dealing with cargo cult phenomena. Cargo cult phenomena, for those of you new to my channel, is the introduction of a technologically advanced people among primitive indigenous people who have no frames of reference for the things they're observing. When they see a man with glowing sticks go out onto a long stretch of flat stone on the ground, to them it's a religious ceremony, and a shaman is waving magical staves, and it calls down these metal birds from heaven. And the metal birds open up, and people come out with boxes and cargo, cigarettes and t-shirts and sweets and Twinkies. And when the indigenous natives see what's going on in the South Pacific in World War II, when the GIs were disembarking the cargo freighters and bombers, the indigenous people thought it was magic. So after the war, the indigenous people, the Micronesians, Polynesians, Melanesians, Hawaiians, they try to replicate. They perform these rituals that they saw these white people do, that brought down all this good stuff from the sky, from heaven, these big giant metal barking birds. And they try to replicate these in rituals, hoping that it will work for them. This is cargo cult phenomenon. The history of the world, the history of our traditions, the history of the mythological records, our folklore, our fairy tales, everything. They all preserve accurate information. It's the frames of reference that have changed. This is what we're dealing with. It's no different than the Phoenix phenomenon being preserved in nursery rhymes. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Yeah, Phoenix phenomenon. Everything turns red. Red fall out from the sky. Ashes. They think it's red ashes from the sky. Then the Phoenix phenomenon is always terminated with an earthquake, a massive earthquake. Ring around the rosies, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Nursery rhymes, they contain the key. But it's never gods we're dealing with. We're dealing with humans. And we're dealing with people who have lost their infrastructure, their frames of reference. A long period of time goes by before a technologically advanced race resurfaces, comes out, and teaches the people on the surface basically everything they need to know again. This has happened multiple times. This is one of the core tenets of my research. I've showed it's happened many times. Mother Shipton describes it perfectly. After the return of the Sky Dragon, people will come up out of a mountain from underground to re-educate the surface world. This is Mother Shipton's prophecy from over 500 years ago. After the Phoenix phenomenon and the return of the Nemesis X object, separated by 6.5 years in 2040 to 2046, we have the elite, their industrial military complex, their scientists, those who are preserved in cities underground, who survive. They'll be coming back up. When they come back up, they'll be coming up from Colorado Mountains, Cheyenne Mountains. They'll be coming out of the Appalachians. They'll be coming out of different mountain ranges in Australia, in Europe, Switzerland. These facilities have been built all over the world. They're not even a secret. You can easily find all kinds of official government documents on the funding and the building and the contracts to build these subterranean cities. I'm not talking about the fallout bunkers. I'm not talking about the rich and famous actors and actresses building their own bunkers and all that. These people don't know what they're doing. These are the dumbasses. Because all these facilities have to become a part of public record. Each municipality has laws in place where the contractors who build these have to provide the schematics to that municipality. So all these rich and famous people that are building bunkers, they're stupid, they're dumb. They're on the outside looking in, thinking that their money's going to save them. It's not going to save them. Because when shit hits, when people start realizing by 2031, 2032, and 2033 that damn, the elite have been preparing all along. Jason's been telling us since 2004 that they've been building underground cities for an event that's going to happen 36 years in the future. Here it is, 2024. You got 16 years left. Actually, you got 15 and a half years left. They haven't stopped building. The U.S. Air Force is the one using machines underground to build these tunnels. They're building these underground facilities to survive. The rich and famous and dumbasses like Billy Carson have these underground bunkers being built. It's worthless. It's worthless. The reason it's worthless is because the elite, the power structure in places, it owns all the municipalities. The municipalities all have the data for all the underground facilities that have been built that are not a part of the military-industrial complex. All of the architectural schematics for underground for all these places, they're stupid. Because around 2030, 2031, 2032, when the private sector actually realizes what's going on and that you're being left on the surface world to survive on your own for about a 12-year period while they safely live in luxury underground, do you think they're not going to release that information to the public? Because the people in the deep earth biospheres underground, they don't want competition when we come back up. They don't want these rich and famous people to survive in these little facilities. They're going to make all that a part of the public domain. So all the people on the surface world are going to have access to all these people's facilities to know where the ingress and egress and escape route points are for all these underground bunkers that are being built all over the world. These people like Billy Carson building these bunkers are stupid. They're just dumb. They didn't realize you're being set up. And it's so easy to see. So easy to see. You think the people that know about these bunkers that you built, these contractors aren't going to release that information? They're not going to come for you when they realize, holy shit, in 2036, the world gets shut down. 2036, the whole world gets shut down. Infrastructure's all shut down and collapsed. Why? Because in early 2036 or 2035, the entire military-industrial complex, everybody who's on the lists will be safely in deep earth biospheres, in sealed vaults, in multiple facilities, all over the ground, waiting it out. Because 4 years, they want to soften the surface world. They're going to want to soften the population. They don't want people to prepare. They want all kinds of chaos. This is all about control, guys. It's always been about control. This is the history of the Anuna. When you really research the traditions about Deucalion, sea crops, Ogyges, Enki, you realize these were benefactors only in the sense that they brought a technologically advanced infrastructure full of its amenities, food, and water back to a world that had lost everything. And the only place they could have brought it from was the underworld. And this is why the Sumerian texts on the Anunnaki are absolutely packed. Whole sagas and epics in the Sumerian and Akkadian cuneiform are all about trips to the underworld. Hundreds of years later, when these stories were redacted and rewritten by the priesthood, they didn't have the frames of reference to understand that originally these were technologically advanced trips into subterranean facilities. Garden realms, Edens, holy mountains underground, full of all the delights and provisions. This is the origin of our traditions on Mount Shasta. This is the origin of the traditions of all these Shambhala. These underground beautiful civilizations that have everything. It's because it's not mythological, it's true. These civilizations have always blossomed underground. there's more real estate in the underworld than there is on the surface world. Because on the surface world, we can only spread out in 2 dimensions. In the underground, we can go in 3 dimensions. It's simple arithmetic, guys. There's way more space in the underworld than there is on the surface. The story is not indifferent in the ancient Americas as opposed to the old worlds of Africa, Europe, and Asia. The story actually has more detail. I've got multiple videos about the Heliolithic Maritime Empire, how they were technologically advanced. They were a worldwide, basically shipping guild, and how they were responsible for the megalithic period of the middle to late Bronze Age. They were absolutely, their whole infrastructure was wiped out by the Phoenix in the month of May 1687 BC. I'm so confident in what happened and the dating that I mentioned a lot of the data in 3 published books. That's another thing I want to address. I want to address to you guys. I got a lot of new people to my channel that don't know. I'm only new to YouTube. 4 years on YouTube. I'm not new to publishing. I'm not new to research. I've had over a dozen books published, up to 17 at one time. I retract some of them when I want to rewrite them and put out better material. I'm kind of neurotic about that. But I've written 27 books, and they're all available in PDFs or on Amazon or Booktree Press publishes 7 of them. I was a writer, author, and researcher taken very seriously way before I started putting all my research for free public consumption on YouTube, because I believe it's that important. And in this research, this is what you find, guys. You're gonna find all the data that shows that through all these resets, our infrastructure has remained intact, but not on the surface. On the surface, we get reset. In the underworld, we have the preservation of libraries. Let me get back to the American point. Viracocha, Boquica, Votan, Quetzalcoatl. Common denominator is they're all described as bearded. Sometimes it's straight up said they're white, our white brothers, like the Native Americans of the Algonquin tribes, 36 tribes, 37 tribes of the North American Native American, the indigenous people. I believe it's pronounced the Algonquin families, but Algonquin families, something like that. Amazing traditions. I've got quite a few books about these people. They have some amazing traditions about the vapor canopy world, the giants, the stone giants, spider grandmother, the first world, the megafauna, how the ancestors built a tower and challenged the gods. Yeah, they remembered all that. And they remembered 2 great floods, not 1. That's right. Some amazing traditions. But they believed that white people showed up in the ancient times and introduced to them technology, wisdom, learning, the arts. This is the story of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Book of Enoch. No, when the Watchers appear, why they call them Watchers? Because they have big eyes. In the ancient East, when Orientals represented Caucasoid people, they always over-accentuated their eyes, made their eyes real big and round. The Sumerians did the same thing, and they show all these alabaster statues. Alabaster's white. Alabaster statues of men and women representing the Anuna, and yet in every instance, the eyes are lapis lazuli. Why are the eyes lapis lazuli? Because it's the only blue mineral that they can find in the Near East. There are no mountains in Sumer and Babylonia. It's a river valley. Lapis lazuli is all they can find. So that's what they use for the eyes on these white-skinned alabaster busts. You've seen the pictures of them. There's a bunch of them. Encyclopedias always show you Sumerian busts and statues and stuff. So yeah. I had to do some negotiating here for a minute. I had to be quiet. When we take into consideration that many of the destructions and cataclysmic episodes that we have suffered through as the human family over millennia, and then we research the traditions that follow those cataclysms, all these culture heroes, why were they heroes? What did they do to become heroic? In almost every incident, they brought the knowledge of farming, agriculture. Like Enki, he brought canal works. That's why he was like the Lord of the Waters, Lord of the Deep. Man, he taught people how to build artificial locks and tanks and wharfs and quays and canal works and irrigation works. That's what was attributed to him. Enki taught infrastructure, how to water the agriculture, how to water the people, so that the population could explode. We have the stories of the ancient, I'm talking the very old, ancient Pergamum library of Asia Minor. Pergamum, it's where the New Testament says was Satan's seat. It also had a massive temple with a library. One of the oldest mentioned library in the ancient world was Pergamum. For the Mediterranean world. You would see authors like Sanchuniathon, 1000 BC, Phoenician chronicler there. You would see copies of the Hittite the Hittite text, the Errol Epos. You would see things like you would see at the Pergamum library, you would see Greek or Phoenician translations of the Carrot cosmology, the legend of King Carrot, Canaanite king, the Rashamra and Ugaritic epics. You would see the Epic of Gilgamesh, probably multiple versions, like the Hittite, the Mitannian, the Urartian, and the Annals of Urartu. Many ancient collections of writings, the Karsag tablets, the Kudar Larimor tablets, the Sargonad epic. They would all be there. These are ancient, and they were in circulation back then. The Atrahasis epic, the ancient cosmology of the Enuma Elish of Babylon. The required reading of the ancient world would have been in the Pergamum library. We are told, I believe it was Livy. If not Livy, don't quote me. One of the Roman writers, Tatian, Tacitus, Livy. It wasn't a Greek writer. It was one of them. One of the Roman writers, Pliny the Younger. I'm not sure which one, but it can be verified. He had claimed that the Ionians of Asia Minor, these are ancient Israelites, they had donated the Pergamum library to Rome. Rome inherited the Pergamum library. Rome had already inherited a whole bunch of the texts that were supposedly destroyed from the Alexandrian library, but it didn't happen. I know a lot of people, they lament like, oh man, the Alexandrian library was destroyed. Yeah, it was. But some of the greatest of all texts were secreted out. Alexandrian library was destroyed like 7 times. 7 different times. So we have these massive resets. And I mean, we don't have a lot of data to go off of, so I got to show you everything we found. And like the Ogygian deluge, my confidence level is very high about what happened in 1687 BC. That's why I have it in 3 published books and 5 full 2-hour videos. 10 hours of video evidence showing you what happened in just one single month in the year 1687 BC, when the Heliolithic maritime empire of the Anuna, who were now called the Muru, the Westerners, was destroyed. The reason I'm telling you all this is because when we divorce ourselves from any ridiculous adult fantasy pinwheel version, Nickelodeon version of history, like the Anunnaki or ancient aliens, and we put things back into their proper context, that the Anunnaki were merely human, everything makes sense. That's why the shard count makes sense. Billy Carson tries to tell you that 7 kings of the Sumerian king list ruled for 241,200 years. You have to wonder, why am I going to accept any type of advice on how to invest my crypto when this moron here isn't even publishing his own crypto wallet and is merely just selling advice? Why would I even accept crypto advice from a man who's also trying to tell me that alien gods landed in the ancient past and each one ruled for 60,000 years? You have to be a special type of stupid to listen to an individual like that and take them seriously. And then when Mr. Carson goes off on his spiritual or pseudo-spiritual tangents, stuff he borrows from the videos he listens to, some of them are mine. And he goes off and sits there with his wife talking about how, it's just so weird. It's such a material. He said, to me, he reminds me of a televangelist. It's such a materialist spiritualism. It's so weird. Well, yeah, why would you take your spiritual advice from somebody who won't even defend the integrity of their own claims to the public? I don't understand. Just don't understand. But it's guys like this that promote this BS. These ancient alien gods came and they built Egypt. If you are of Egyptian pedigree, if your bloodlines go back to northern Africa in any way, you should be highly offended that this man is robbing you, absolutely robbing you from your ancestral history and accomplishments. It's total bullshit. Instead of humans building the great, wonderful, magnificent temples and stonework of ancient Egypt, this shill's going around telling everybody aliens did it, absolutely robbing you. I know this: if I was in charge of the Egyptian Antiquities Department, the whole Ancient Aliens franchise wouldn't even be allowed. And now you got to go. You got to go. I'd give them free busing right back to the airport. Yeah, it's an insult. It's an absolute insult to accept the idea that the things that we find in like megalithomania, the things that we find across the board in the Heliolithic period, Baalbek with the Trilithon, humans could have done that. And for those of you new to my channel, I provide a lot of evidence to show you that we used to live in a different biosphere. Things were not as heavy as they are today. We were also a lot stronger. We could also hold our breath for a very long period of time because the atmospheric pressure was different. You and I could just go to the side of a body of water and then just breathe calmly for a minute and then just hold our breath. And we could go under there for 6 or 7 minutes without any problem. And we could swim far deeper than we can swim today because the atmospheric pressure was different, which changed the pressure of the water as well. We lived in a very different world. One that was absolutely oxygen dense. The vapor canopy world's coming back, guys. I showed it to you in the Olympic opening ceremony. Absolute proof that my interpretation of the 2012 Olympic ceremony was talking about these resets, talking about how we as a race survive underground and then come back up and teach technology was all there. The Phoenix phenomenon, it was all there. The vapor canopy, it was all there. And absolute proof that that interpretation was correct of those ceremonies, and that the verbiage of industrial revolution and all the overtures they gave us was just cover. The actual meaning was in the ceremony itself concerning the true history of our world. The absolute proof is in my next video, because my next video is the 2012 Olympic decode of the closing ceremony. I'm going to prove to you that the opening ceremony was all about the Phoenix. So, anyway, Zecharia Sitchin did not do us any justice. He did wake up a lot of people, but he was supposed to do that, because he literally created a zombified version of basically intellectualism. Highly intelligent people were attracted to the Earth Chronicles because it was something novel, new, very well researched, and it's absolutely packed with verifiable facts. But just because a book contains 80% truth doesn't mean that the 20% falsity doesn't do critical damage to the cause. And what I mean is Zecharia Sitchin published a lot of truth. And that truth can be found in the historical anecdotes and can be found in the archaeology. Just because archaeologists have found a Sumerian temple, they found references to a king named Lagash, just because they found tablet references in other Sumerian cities that verify the history of Lagash, just because archaeologists have found evidence of armor that had Sumerian, sigils that referred to a certain city that Lagash ruled, does not mean that when Zecharia Sitchin says that Lagash was a god who had come from planet Nibiru. Yeah, totally untrue. He has literally used 80% facts and then used more facts to verify those facts. It's a layering of self-referencing from verifiable sources that will comport with the things that he's saying is true. And yet, he'll slip that little shit in there that's absolutely untrue. That's what the entire Earth Chronicles, every single Zecharia Sitchin book is doing that. And today, we can't challenge Zecharia Sitchin to a debate, or I would have done that. But we can challenge Billy Carson. But right now, we got a runner. So if any of you guys got any good ideas how to bring that dude to the battlefield, let me know. Because right now he's running. Moral of the story is the Anunnaki were just a Babylonian version of the older Sumerian Anuna. Who are the Anuna? I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm only telling you what I've shown you the evidence for on my channel. They were just good old white people in the 35th century BC. I'm working on all the new Anuna files right now, putting them all together in a drive for you guys. History's awesome. History is absolutely awesome and fascinating, and it's more mysterious than you can imagine. We've got to isolate these disinformation experts. We have to constantly bring awareness to the community. Don't think it's not working, guys. Many of you have been discouraged with a lot of the things. You think I'm calling people out and all. You know what? If you don't like it, get off my channel. But I will tell you this. It's already done. It's already done a massive amount of help to the community. There are many people who have emailed me in appreciation for opening their eyes. Anyway, that's it for now. The Anunnaki were human. Anybody tells you otherwise, you tell them to come to Archaix for a debate.